These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Got 2 words for you guys.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Naz Reid. Naz Reid.
It's not Naz bleeping Reid?
I
feel like
mean,
he
we could petition
some
for it to
snarl.
be.
I feel like he brings that snarl. I feel he deserves that respect on his name now.
To this point, it's just been Naz Reid.
It's Naz Reid. That'd be an add-on to the great lineage of Naz Reid. And then it's Naz Reid, period. It's not like Naz Reid ellipses.
Yeah.
Naz Reid, period.
Naz bleepin' Reid is the next evolution.
Sing it, man.
Yeah.
Sing it.
Dude, we're going to have at least 3 episodes of Flagrant Howls this week. The regularly scheduled episodes with Kyle tomorrow and Thursday. Got a game to react to in Atlanta tonight. I'm going to be at Target Center doing the Media Row thing on Wednesday.
Nice.
So, and then again, Monday, they got like Celtics coming to town next week too. So there's kind of a gauntlet of schedule here. But I have for you gentlemen 4 Wolves observation. It's Mackey's Wolves observations here on Flagrant Howls, and would love to know what you think of these. Starting with this one, okay? Naz Reid, Naz bleepin' Reid, that is, continues to be a revelation for this franchise. I think you had kind of brought it up, the question on the scoop session with Doogie here, which you can also find on the SKOR North YouTube channel, Mackey and Judd podcast feed, that it's hard to find a better just development story in franchise history. I'm trying to rack my brain going back to like the early 90s. I mean, hell, they've had a hard enough time just getting like top 10 picks to pan out, right? Let alone the undrafted guys that come in and have to grind their way through summer league just to get a roster spot. It might be, I don't think this is a hot take, Naz Reid might be the greatest development story in franchise history. You could say Kevin Garnett, who went from high school to being one of the
totally
25
different.
greatest players of all time, but like,
right.
This might be the greatest development story in franchise history.
I agree completely. And I can't think of another guy that they signed as an undrafted free agent who has made this big of impact and just continues to improve. Like this is one of this might end up, and this is probably hyperbole right now, but this might end up, Phil, being one of the great undrafted free agent stories in Minnesota sports.
Yeah, well, that's a fun list. John Randall.
Yeah, I was going to say John Randall tops that list. He's a Hall of Famer.
Adam Thielen.
Yep.
Baseball doesn't really have undrafted.
Yeah,
because it's a 50-round draft.
There's a 50-round draft, yeah.
Yeah, basketball, though, and football both lend themselves to, if you can do it scouting-wise, finding guys like this.
Jared Spurgeon has turned himself into an incredible player after being like a 7th-round pick. I know it's, again, kind of in the baseball territory. There's 7th rounds of the draft, but like Jared Spurgeon's turned himself in from a 7th round nearly. Was he even undrafted, Judd? I think he might have even been undrafted.
Yeah, he was an
turned himself into
Islander.
a captain in the NHL.
Yeah.
It's up there.
But I mean, yes, Naz Reid is trending in an incredibly positive direction, and he's already made an impact before this, and right now he looked fantastic on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think the biggest question coming into the year, and again, it's been 2 games, so let's give this thing some time to play out so we really know what we're dealing with here, but the biggest question, so they signed him, and he has now confirmed it really wasn't very much in question. I think on the outside, because there's a negotiation, his agent would be an idiot if he let the message get out that like, my client's probably going to take a discount because he loves it here. He loves that the fans like chant his name on the sidewalks and the shopping malls. But he did kind of confirm, I feel the love. It's the franchise that took a shot on me. There's really no reason for me to go anywhere else. But the biggest challenge then was, okay, the Wolves are having a hard enough time trying to figure out, can Cat and Gobert play together? How do you then find like 25 minutes for Naz Reid, 23, 25 minutes? And last season, this is one thing to keep an eye on here. It's a major change compared to last season. So Naz Reid's worst teammate pairing in terms of like lineup plus minuses, like lineup combos, his worst teammate pairing was Rudy Gobert. When he was on the court with Rudy Gobert last season, regardless of the other 3 guys that were on the court with them, that pairing was a minus 12 points per 100 possessions together. It didn't work.
Wolf.
This year so far, we've seen some very encouraging signs in 2 games, especially that fourth quarter. I mean, they put that game away. I think Cat checked out with like 8 or 9 minutes to go, maybe in the fourth quarter. And it was Gobert and Naz Reid. Again, like a terrible pairing from a plus-minus standpoint last year. And that pairing plus the other 3 guys closed that game out. Jimmy Butler didn't play, and Kevin Love's a key bench player for them. But it's a good sign. If Naz Reid and Gobert can play together, it opens up the door for Naz Reid to really get 25 minutes and it not being like shoehorned into these bad lineups. So that's really a good thing. And the one question I want to ask you guys, and Judd, you've been around longer than we have in terms of like watching some of these athletes come through town. Fans love Naz Reid. They literally bring Naz Reid signs. Someone just sent me on Twitter here, or X. They carved Naz Reid's name into a pumpkin and sent it into the Flagrant Howls Twitter account. People love this guy. Like he gets louder ovations than pretty much anybody on the team, right? He's like, his ovations are right there with Anthony Edwards. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Minnesota sports fans have gravitated so much to Naz Reid? What is it about him? I know he has a cool name, but it's like it goes beyond, because we used to do it with Jason Koobs, right?
Yeah,
or Plouffe or whatever.
No.
Like what is it about him that we love, do you think?
It's his style of play and the fact that he works so damn hard, and it's clear that that is what carries him. So like it's not just like he shows up and, oh my God, the talent, right? But I mean, he is an incredibly effective player because he works his ass off. We love guys in this town who do that and succeed. He's a great story. He's a fantastic story. And he has a certain charisma about him as well. But I think everything about how he approaches the game and everything about how the difference he makes through his style of play, we in this town, and I don't think it's just us, I think a lot of towns appreciate this, gravitate towards. And you go through, the list of guys in this town who have worked their asses off. And we always appreciate that. And I think that's a huge thing. Now, that's sort of coupled with the fact, though, that I feel like his game is definitely growing. Like he's turned himself into a really good player too. He's not just a work ethic, meat and potatoes guy now. He does those things, but he's also really talented, and that talent is starting to show. But you know what? From a personality standpoint, he's everything that Karl-Anthony Towns is not, and we love that. We love the fact that he comes in and works his ass off, and he doesn't gripe and he doesn't complain, and you don't see him bitching and moaning to officials. I think that is such a big thing in this town.
Yeah, Minnesota loves the kind of hardworking, undrafted, unproven guy. I mean, I'm looking at Basketball Reference right now, and out of high school, Naz Reid was the 18th best recruit out of high school.
I think he was a
top
five-star.
20 recruit.
He was McDonald's All-American.
Ahead of guys of like Emmanuel Quickly, he was a higher recruit than him. Kobe White, he was just behind Darius Garland. He was ahead of Tyler Hero. Like he was definitely like a highly regarded recruit coming out of high school. Obviously falls out of the draft, but turns out to be like this great project. And Minnesotans, yeah, they can identify with that. It is a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah, we love blue collar grinders. Thielen was blue collar grinder, but he was also one of us. So it was like, a jetpack strapped to everything that he was we would have loved him anyways, but Andy's from Minnesota. Oh my God. Right. And Naz Reid falls into the sort of blue collar grinder category. And so like, I think if you are perceived to work your ass off, but you're also perceived to be humble and not really try to draw attention to yourself, we love that combination. So and guys who play with energy, guys who get their jersey dirty and guys who fly around, we appreciate those things together. And if you can do all those things and even have, it's kind of a nuanced thing because we like guys who are humble, but we also want you to show some personality too. So there's a fine line, and Naz seems to walk that line perfectly. I don't think it's strategic. I think it's just who he is.
Right.
And Karl, to bring up Judd's comparison of why doesn't Karl get that ovation that Naz Reid gets? Because it's pretty incredible. You've got a number 1 overall pick who's been a franchise cornerstone for like 8 years, and he gets an ovation, but he doesn't get the same ovation as the undrafted guy that's coming in here, working his way through the grind of summer league a few years ago and whatever. I think their personalities and their styles have just connected differently with the fans.
I'll say this, and it might not be here, it might be, but I can see Naz Reid on an NBA championship team more than I can see Karl on one.
Wow.
Like I think he's got that I think he's got that it factor. Like a guy like Naz ends up being a captain, not because he walks into a room and says, I'm going to lead this team. It's because of all the stuff he does and that he allows himself to be himself. And like, I think Naz Reid could be an instrumental part of a championship team.
He also, okay, I love that take because I don't think Karl can be part of a championship team as like one of the two lead dogs anymore. And Naz isn't, like, Naz has kind of found Naz is very comfortable on some nights. Hey, if it's going to be 16 minutes and I score 8 points, that's fine, whatever. Like, I'll just sort of fill in what the team needs. On some nights, the team needs me to save them and literally score like 15 points in the second half or whatever and carry the game. I'm comfortable with that too. He also made a couple passes in that game too. There was one that wound up amounting to nothing. I believe Dane Moore retweeted this if you want to check it out on his Twitter account. Mm-hmm. Or was it Jace? It might have been Jace Frederick. But
I think it was Dane. I saw
Naz was at the elbow and he gets a pass. I think it was like a screen and roll. He gets past the ball on the elbow. And instead of like taking it and going to work, he just deflected it into the corner with one hand, just like Nikola Jokic would. And I think Kyle Anderson was in the corner, but Kyle didn't have an open shot, so the action just wound up continuing. But it's like, God, he's like touch passing now too. He's got these crazy skills. So Naz Reid, man. Naz Reid is the first observation.
Fun player.
Okay, super fun player. Okay, second observation. I know it's 2 games. Okay, I don't want to go crazy here, but Rudy Gobert looks a lot more spry and bouncy than he did a year ago coming off of the crazy trade and the offseason, the international play, which he did play internationally a little bit this year too. It just looks like a different dude. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the Wolves defense has sort of followed with great results. They're holding opponents to 93.5 points per game through the first 2. Again, no Jimmy Butler. Like it's a 2-game sample size, but I think Rudy looks like the Rudy you thought you were trading for a year ago, maybe for the first time.
So I think the word spry is exactly right. And I don't think that's 2 games. I did a big piece on Steve Hutchinson the year after he signed here. And I mean, he is a Hall of Fame guard, unbelievable player. And I remember I sat down with him the year after he signed here to sort of unpack things. And he talked about last year was a blur. Like I couldn't stop things. Like it was just like, you're moving your family and then you're doing this and then you're doing that. And and I mean, Hutch was as big a professional as you can get. Like this guy, he wasn't screwing around. He literally was like, this was just such a year of transition. And then of course, starting the next year, it slowed down. Gobert looks the same way. Like he looks far more comfortable. I do think that the international ball he played a year ago was probably more intense than this year.
Yep.
But I think the main thing is probably comfort, what you're talking about. It's comfort, and he knows the system, and he knows the town, and he knows the coach. And it's weird because some guys, it doesn't matter. They get traded and they're absolutely fine. They don't care. Some guys do. Gobert spent his entire career in one place and was comfortable there and knew his exact role there. And I think the whole thing with he's going to work with Cat now and being in a different city and all of that, I'm not going to be surprised at all not that he's going to be a great player here, but a lot more comfortable and thus effective for what the realistic expectation should be.
Yeah.
And they need him. I mean, they obviously need him to pay off the investment they made to a degree. But I think last year, a lot of fans, media, everyone else, they hyped up these twin towers, what they called Cat and Gobert. This twin tower system is going to work, and that obviously was kind of didn't end up working out for them at all. But now he takes like this darkness retreat in the off season, and he's just a little bit more comfortable. He's having fun. Like, was he on that camel right when they were in Abu Dhabi like last month too? Like,
yeah.
He just seems a lot more relaxed. And is there still like warts in his game? I still don't understand how a guy that big has just cinder block of hands. Like there's definitely things of his game that kind of blow my mind. And I'm not trying to clown him, but I do think him being back here second year, him kind of going through his offseason stuff, I think that'll only be beneficial, and I think you'll see a lot more improved and a lot better version of Rudy Gobert than you saw last season.
And this is not his fault, but the reality is this: he will never live up to that trade.
Yeah.
Like it's, if you're like, well, he's got to deliver on that entire trade, I'm sorry, it ain't happening. But that being said, I do think that there is a significant step. And if he was considered to be a piece of the puzzle, it feels like now the piece is fitting. And a year ago, I'd say it didn't fit.
But, you know, another thing, too, I think the audience knows my feelings on D'Angelo Russell, and I think those feelings have been validated with some of the stuff in L.A., notably being awful and benched in the playoffs in their most key games, right? They can't even play the guy. But there was all this stuff that kind of came out right around and after the trade of D'Angelo Russell that D'Lo was openly clowning Gobert in the locker room, and like to Declan's point about the cinder block hands. I mean, it's now been widely reported that D'Lo was going around within earshot of players, coaches, and even media saying like, you know, if he could catch a pass in the lane, he would have had more points. Like just, and it's not that he's wrong, but it's that you're trying to build a culture, right? And sorry, I'm gonna
Maya?
Yeah, my
Maya?
door's been open. Yeah.
Maya.
You know, it's not that he's
fan.
Yeah, I know. It's not that he's wrong, but it's like you're trying to build chemistry, a culture, and
that's a D move right there. You know, you're exactly right.
So to have like Mike Conley and by the way, Anthony Edwards basically didn't pass the ball last season to Gobert ever, like on pick and roll. It seems like those guys have made a concerted effort to get lobs to Gobert early. They're not trying to shoehorn it, but it feels more natural now than a year ago for sure, and then all throughout the D'Angelo Russell period.
And you can criticize Gobert for this, but I mean, we all heard stories about the fact he's sensitive.
Yeah.
So imagine your teammate basically mocking you.
Yeah.
Like that does not help you.
Yeah, dude, it's toxic. Think about that. Like you come into work every day and it's like, even if they're kind of right, they're not making it a better work environment by doing that. And that's like D'Lo was always kind of clueless, and he's just kind of this aloof player, and he's always been, even going back to that. What was it? Nick Young, wasn't the incident with him and
Swaggy? Yeah.
Or was that? No, that might have been different. He wasn't involved in that, wasn't he? That was just Swaggy P. Was it D'Lo?
I thought he was.
Was it D'Lo and Swaggy? Okay.
He's the one who I think like put it out there, texted somebody about it.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
no.
He's
always just been this weird aloof guy, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
You're correct.
So, okay. On the flip side, here's the third observation. We don't have evidence still that the Cat Gobert pairing works. And I'm just going to bring you some statistical evidence here. You can use your eye test. I do feel like they did a better job at times getting up and down in transition here and there in that game against the Heat. But again, like they run that starting five out, and the Heat without Jimmy Butler take an early like 8-point lead, and it's kind of ugly. And then they start subbing guys in. Now, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has not fit great in that starting lineup either in place of Jaden. He's not knocking down the open shots. I think he will at some point. But last year, regular season, the Cat Gobert pairing over, I think it was 500 minutes together in the regular season. It was -1 point per 100 possessions. So it was like just below break even when those guys were on the court together, which isn't a great sign when your two highest paid players and two of your best players, if you're just hoping that they can be break even when they're on the court together for like 20 minutes a night, you need more out of that pairing. There's some lineups in the NBA where, hey, we gotta run this lineup out with like 3 or 4 bench players. Our goal is to break even with this lineup. That's not the case with 2 supermax players. They need to be better than break even when they're on the court together, I think. So they were -1 per 100 possessions regular season last year. In the playoffs, smaller sample, but it was worse. It was a -8 points per 100 possessions when they were on the court together in the playoffs. This year, again, small sample size, 2 games, -19 points per 100 possessions through the Toronto and the Miami game against backups. So when are we going to see some evidence? I think at some point getting Jaden McDaniels back in the starting lineup, get the pieces that are meant to fit together. But that's something to keep an eye on, that to this point, the evidence is showing, and it's continuing to stack minutes, that pairing is not a positive influence on winning.
which is where Naz comes in because he is. And I guess here's my question is, and Kat missed such substantial time a year ago that you do have to give this time because it might work. But every time I watch it, it just doesn't look like a fit. And I'm not sure. It feels so I'm going to make an observation here. Not a hot take, but an observation, Phil, and I want you to respond. It feels like neither player knows how to make it work, and it doesn't feel like it's ever comfortable. So like with Naz, I feel Naz always takes a role of, okay, that's not working. I need to make it work. Like, this is up to me. And so he'll adjust things, as you talked about with him going from a really negative pairing with Gobert to now early on, it's positive. When I watch Kat and Rudy, and especially Kat, and this, I'm going to pick on Kat again, but it doesn't feel like there is it doesn't feel like either one of them is doing enough to compensate for what the other needs. And they're both really highly paid players, to your point, and I think that creates a conundrum.
Yeah, I think
your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I will say this. There's only so much Rudy can do to cater to other people because you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not versatile. He's not.
Good point.
You can't move him around at different positions, really. He can't shoot from outside. He does have that push shot now that he showed off a couple times, which I kind of like. It kind of expands his range beyond dunking to like 8 feet, where he can kind of.
Plus, I just like that term,
the push shot.
The push.
Good one.
Right.
It sounds like something from 1925 basketball. James Naismith here. Here's the push shot by Rudy Gobert. Look at the push shot.
It's it's definitely expanding his range to close to the free throw line. So we appreciate that. But yeah, I think, and I'll defend Karl a little bit in that last year, before he got hurt, he was the one that had to sacrifice the most because he's a guy that played the 5 for the most part. Now it's like, hey, we need you to play the 4, and we need you to just sort of change the way that you operate. You're going to be the one that has to, because you're more versatile, so we need you to adjust and sort of fit around Rudy Gobert. But now this year, it's like, okay, Karl did too much catering to Rudy Gobert last year. We need Karl to be Karl and go out there and get yours. But sometimes when he's out there getting his, does it fit into the flow of a lineup that includes Rudy Gobert? Like, it's still, I think, I hate to say this a year in, but it's like, it's still a work in progress. But to this point, it hasn't been positive value statistically for the Wolves. So we'll see. And Kat has not really, like, he looks a little rusty too. Like, he needs to settle in and kind of figure it out. He was 2 for 10 that first game shooting threes, and you know, he didn't even barely play in the fourth quarter of that game against the Heat. So we'll kind of see. And then my fourth observation for you guys, Anthony Edwards has added some layers to his game since the last time we saw him.
I saw this, yes.
So a few things. So his offense hasn't fully clicked yet. You know, he had that really bad shooting night. Mostly, it's funny because he's been pretty good he's shooting like 50-some% from beyond the 3-point range. It's the intermediate and close range stuff that he can't hit the broadside of a barn so far in the first 2 games. So he's got to figure out, okay, how do I get to the rim? I think the 3-point shot looks great. How do I get to the rim instead of settling for some of these intermediates? But he did unveil a pull-up bank shot from like the left elbow, kind of like the left wing area. It was maybe like an 15-foot bank shot. That was pure. That was very much like Michael Jordan in the 90s kind of a thing. And then what I loved in that first game is, all right, your offense is kind of a train wreck. You're missing, he was like 4 for 20 from inside the 3-point line. When your offense isn't clicking, how else can you impact the game? Ties a career high with 14 rebounds. And then the second game, he didn't really start scoring until he did like an 8-point barrage thing in the fourth quarter to put the game away, which was great. But he used his vision and he used the attention that he draws off pick and roll and double teams and stuff, and he used it to get other guys looks. He had 8 assists in that game, or was it 9? It was like 8 or 9 assists and some other great passes that wound up not going for baskets. So I love that he's added a couple shots. I love that he's now going out and hunting for rebounds and not just stat stuffing, but like looking to impact the game in other ways on those nights where he's not efficient offensively.
Yeah, he's a pro's pro right now, right? Like he is he will find his shot, or at least what he's struggling from. But he knows, like, you can tell this guy lives in the gym and he works on his game constantly. And I am comfortable with whatever he needs to do because he is going to be and should be the heartbeat of this team. So, yeah, when I watch him play now, I mean, he adds elements to his game consistently. And to your point, if he's struggling, he's not stupid. Now, what I like about it is he doesn't duck out of the game itself. Like, he'll still shoot. It's not like he won't shoot. But he seems to be cognizant of the fact of his importance. He wants, how can I put this? He's incredibly talented. So I'm not comparing him to this player because he's just clearly more talented. But he wants all the smoke that Wiggy never wanted.
Yo,
like, he wants all of that.
Smoke.
But do you remember how we used to complain, and rightfully so? That Wiggy was always like, some nights I don't have it, some nights I do. Edwards like tries to find his game in the game and then capitalizes on what he's doing best. This is a pro. This is a first overall pick. This is refreshing to watch. Even when he struggles, it's fun to find what he's going to decide he's going to do in that game.
Yeah, you know who doesn't want the smoke? Jimmy Butler too.
Yeah,
hasn't played in Minnesota. Is it five straight games?
Since Ant basically told him to F himself when Butler tried to push him around. You know why? Because if Ant had been in the gym for the legendary practice, it's a different story.
That doesn't happen, yeah.
There's a throwdown.
I would love to see that interaction now.
Ant wouldn't put up with that crap.
Ant is Ant's game has a little Jimmy Butler to it, and that he loves the mid range. He's a high energy player. Ant's a little bigger, I think, than Jimmy Butler, and Ant's a better shooter than Jimmy Butler. But the crowd did props to the Minnesota crowd that night. Where is Jimmy?
And he's laughing and blowing kisses.
Him and Kevin Love were doing the hand over the mouth thing too.
Yeah.
At one point, Kyle Lowry came over. He's like, "This is stupid," and they're like, "Yeah, it is kind of dumb. Like, we go to the NBA Finals every other year. Who are these guys?" And they're right about that. But I still like that they clown Jimmy Butler.
Oh, yeah. And guess what? The fans, good for you. You should clown him. And I saw notes about, well, it's a rest schedule for him and whatever. No, he's avoiding playing here.
A rest schedule. It's the third game of the year.
Well,
I get it's a back-to-back and they're traveling.
Yeah, back-to-back in Boston. Yeah. But no, I agree totally with you. And that does not fall, that resting night does not fall under the purview of the new rules.
Because the one the night before was the national TV game.
Can't sit him for a national TV game. Yes, if you sit him on an arbitrary Saturday night against the Wolves, you're fine.
Yeah. So he doesn't want the smoke. I get it.
Oh.
And what's kind of funny is he ultimately was right about sort of the softness of Towns and Wiggins, and he handled it poorly if you're the Timberwolves, if you're looking to build something here, but he handled it the way that he thought he had to handle it by just wanting to get out of the organization. But if he doesn't do that, the Wolves don't put themselves in a position to draft Anthony Edwards in the first place. So I think going through all of that, even though in retrospect you'd rather have Jimmy Butler than Karl-Anthony Towns, I think over the past few years, you'd rather have Anthony Edwards for the next 10 than any of those. Right?
Yes. And guess what? Ant knows if guys are soft too, but he doesn't be and moan about it.
He actually goes out of his way to try and pump up the guys that are maybe like he pumps up Karl. He'll pump up, not that Rudy is soft necessarily, but like there's a perception that he's like a French guy that's kind of passive aggressive or whatever. And Jaden McDaniels is kind of quiet and soft spoken, and Anthony Edwards goes out of his way to say like, no, this is the most important guy on our team. Yep. He's a lifter up of people, and Jimmy is more of a browbeater of, and it depending on the lineup, like Jimmy's style has worked in Miami, and sometimes those guys want to punch him in the huddle. Sometimes he wants to punch the coach in the huddle, which we almost saw.
But I'd rather have Ant's personality too. So
me too. Yeah.
Dare I say this? Ant is everything that you want if you draft a quarterback. He's a leader. He's positive. But you could tell he's authoritative, though. Like, he doesn't say stuff, and I don't think it gets dismissed.
Would you rather have him or Jaren Hall playing against the Falcons on Saturday?
I think Ant might. Oh, against the Falcons. He's from Atlanta.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe
Oh
it'll be
God,
fun.
he might put up 35.
I just run read option with him for 3 hours and see what happens. Play some defense.
Vikings 28, Falcons 17.
I like
Let's
it.
do it.
I like
Let's
where
do
you're
it.
going. All right,
Good
those
stuff,
are 4 Wolves observations for you guys here. Flagrant Howls, your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with Kyle.